What is up, everyone? Aeneas here. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 new cards for Phyrexia All Will Be One. Uh, if you haven't seen it already, you can check out some of my spoiler videos from before. But today we're going to talk about the top 10 out of all the new cards. So I'm not going to show anything that is unofficially announced. But unfortunately, the top 10 that I found, even looking at the unofficially announced one, are all coming from the ones that are officially spoiled so far, so don't worry. But yeah, there are maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 cards that were in the unofficially announced cards that I thought were pretty good and definitely I'm very interested for. But as far as like the most powerful cards, I think most of them come from the officially spoiled ones already. So that's what you're going to see in this list. And I stick by them. I think these are the top 10 cards overall. And we'll have to see how it pans out after the set comes out. But anyway, without further ado, let's look at the top 10. So starting with number 10, we got Anoint with Affliction. This is just a very solid 2 mana instant removal, and it has something that we need desperately in standard, and that is Exile. So many creature cards right now in standard, especially in those aggro decks, are so annoying to deal with, and they have effects with them, and you just gotta remove them. But most of our good early removal doesn't hit the 3-drops. So we have Cut Down, we have Play with Fire, we have random other removal cards, but it doesn't hit the 3-drops. So this is going to hit the 1, 2, and 3-drops. It exiles them, which is very huge. And then late game, if you have any sort of poison counter stuff going on in your deck, then it just turns into a solid exile effect without the limitation. So very sweet, and I think very useful. And I could even see this being good in Historic because currently there is Eliminate in Historic, which is kind of similar. Destroys a 3-mana creature or Planeswalker, but it doesn't exile. And I think the exile is very, very crucial. So yeah, we'll have to see. But definitely going to see some play in Standard. All right, let's go to number 9. Number 9 is Geth, Thane of Contracts. So this is a 3 mana 3/4, decent stats for the price, but has a very strong tap ability on it. For 3 mana and tap, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, not your hand, the battlefield, and it doesn't get sacrificed at the end of the turn or anything like that. It's just there. So if they kill your Sheoldred, the next turn you can reanimate it, something like that. So very powerful effect in on this card. The drawback is that other creatures get -1/-1, but I'm thinking that since mono black is very strong right now, and mono black doesn't have a great 3-drop, they have Graveyard Trespasser, but not much else in a 3-drop slot. So this could fit right into the deck, mono black or mono black aggro, as another of the 3-drops. And just gives you a lot of resiliency, gives you a way to get back your creatures from the graveyard in the mid to late game. And 3 mana, 3/4, decent stats. The opponent will have to respect that and will have to remove this. You can block a lot of the soldier decks as well because it has a big butt, as we say in Magic, a lot of toughness. Yeah, this seems like a solid include in the mono black decks. All right, moving on to number 8, we got Mondrak Glory Dominus. So I talked about this card before. This is just a really solid 4-drop to go right into the mono white and the Azorius decks. Most of those decks are already running token generating creatures. Like we have the Resolute Reinforcements, we have the Sky Strike Officer, Siege Veteran, you got Adeline, things like that, which just make you tokens automatically. So any of those things, this is going to double those tokens for free. And it has a very reasonable ability, 1 mana. You pay 4 life, which you don't care because you're the aggro deck. You sacrifice 2 artifacts or creatures, and it gets indestructible for the rest of the game. So if the opponent tries to wipe your board, you can just sack your stuff and make this indestructible for 1 mana. That's very solid. Definitely going to see some play in the aggro decks as the top end. So very cool. All right, number 7, we got Conduit of Worlds. So this is kind of a funky card. We've seen a Crucible of Worlds before, which is a 3-mana colorless card, which lets you play land from your graveyards. But it was always a little bit too slow for standard, a little bit underpowered, I'd guess. It could do some cool stuff with the graveyard and mill type strategies, but it was just a little bit too slow. But this card is similar to that, but it has an additional effect, which lets you cast non-land permanents from your graveyard. So I think that's enough to push it over the top where it could be good enough. Even in some sort of mid-range deck, just having the ability to recur your stuff, we've seen is very strong. There's already the 4-mana angel creature, which lets you recast your I think up to 3 CMC creatures. So this is kind of similar to that, but this has no limitation. You can cast anything, not just 3 CMC or less. So if you have a little bit of mill strategy, or you have discard effects or cycling, or even just the opponent kills your creatures, you can cast them again every turn after that for free. They don't get re-exiled. You can just keep casting them. So very powerful effect. We'll see if it's too slow, but still a very powerful effect. All right, so we're on to number 6, and we've got the Karumonix the Rat King. It's a 3-mana 3/3 creature with Toxic 1. Your other rats have Toxic 1 as well. And the reason I included this is it's just a very huge value engine. Of course, you have to build around it. You have to build some sort of rat style deck. But we have a lot of rats from Kamigawa. We have some of the discard rat type effects. And if you just have a reasonable number of rats in your deck, doesn't even have to be all of it, like, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 14 rats, then this is almost always going to get you at least one card, maybe more. So yeah, I think this is a pretty good effect. I mean, 3 mana for a 3/3 with some upside, which also often draws you at least one card. Just solid, right? That's just a solid card. So it's pretty much always a 2-for-1. Sometimes in a rat heavy deck, it's going to be like a 3-for-1 or a 4-for-1. Not very often, but still enough times that it would be worth it. So definitely a cool card, build around, but a very solid card nonetheless. All right, I think we're on to, number 5. We've got Nissa Ascended Animist. So this is just a really solid planeswalker, and maybe the strongest planeswalker in the set, from what I've seen at least. It comes down on turn 5 or 6 or 7, and essentially just makes some really big creatures every turn. Or if you needed to, it can destroy some artifact or enchantment, which is kind of hard to remove. We've seen that effect on planeswalkers before, and it was always very solid. So sometimes the previous planeswalker was used in the sideboard only. It really just depends on what the other abilities do. But since Nissa has a +1 that's always useful, I don't see why this would be a sideboard card. I think it's definitely going to be just a solid planeswalker in any probably mono green or Gruul type of deck, something like that. So if those archetypes never make it into standard, then Nissa might not make it. But either way, Nissa is a very powerful card, and if there's any deck that could run it, it'll definitely be played in standard. All right, moving on to number 4. Number 4, we have Gleeful Demolition. This is just such a strong card. Essentially, almost always going to be like a 3-for-1. Yes, you have to sack some artifact, but there's so many artifact generation stuff in standard right now. You got the Oni Cult Anvil as well, which wants you to sacrifice an artifact. So this works directly with that. Even if it's not that, if it's just some sort of sacrifice deck, you can have like Blood Tithe Harvester. You could have the Sanguine Bloodcaster. I think there's like Blood Fountain. There's so many things to make these cheap blood tokens. There's also lots of treasure token generation in the set. So any of those things, you can use it, sacrifice it, and make 3 goblin tokens for you. And then if you want, you can sack those to get some value. If you have some sort of like Orzhov, well, I guess it would have to be like Mardu or Rakdos, aristocrats type deck. Any of those things, are gonna desperately want this card, and it's just great value, three for one. So yeah, it's awesome. All right, so now we're getting to the top three. So drum roll. The top three. Third place card is Vindictive Flamestoker. Vindictive Flamestoker. So you might be thinking, why this card? All right, well, I don't know how much best of one standard you've played. But honestly, this could even work in historic. I'm not saying it will, but definitely standard best of one. Mono red burn is a thing. It is scary. If your deck is not just like super geared for it, you lose to it. And they have so many non-creature spells in that deck right now. They've got Kumano, the 1-mana enchantment that's a non-creature. They've got the Reckless Impulse, which draws them some cards, which is a non-creature. They've got Play with Fire. They've got Lightning Strike. Just so many things. Like typically they have like 20 non-creature spells in the deck. So this is gonna easily get oil counters on it. They're playing Monastery Swiftspirit for goodness sake, which wants non-creature spells to be cast. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing. They just have another 1-drop, which is going to benefit from casting non-creature spells. And you just cast a few of them, then turn 3 or turn 4, you can cast the second ability, sacrifice Vindictive Flamestoker, discard your hand, then draw 4 cards. So you get 4 cards. And this ability costs 1 less to activate for each oil counter on Vindictive Flamestoker. So, on top of the fact that you can put oil counters on this by casting non-creature spells, is the fact that there's a lot of oil synergy in the new set on some very powerful red cards. So I could definitely see just like this like one mana red aggro tribal where you play all these 1-drops out, you cast a bunch of cheap spells like Play with Fire, Lightning Strike, and your hand is empty, you've burned the opponent down to like 4 health, and then you sacrifice this and you get 4 new cards in your hand. That's just crazy. So I think this is a great card, and that's why I put it at number 3. All right, moving up. Number 2, here we go. Da-da-da. We have Atraxa, the Grand Unifier. And you might be saying, but Aeneas, that's 7 mana. You could never cast that. Hold on. All right. So let's look at what it does, right? So it's 7 mana for 7/7. Has a lot of abilities. Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink. Yeah, none of that really matters. What really matters is this next line. When Atraxa, Grand Unifier enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card of that type from the revealed cards into your hand and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So, I don't know how many of you play Historic that often or have played Standard for a long time. There was this little card called Niv Mizzix. So this was, there's 2 versions of the card to be fair. But the last one that came out cost Wooburg, so every color, and it I think it was 5 mana. So you play it and you get a card of every color combination that you see in the top, I think it was top 6 of your library. Don't quote me on that one, but typically it was very powerful and people played it in Historic a lot, and you get like 3 to 5 cards a lot of the time. Just really crazy, really powerful. And this is almost the same thing, right? And a little bit cheaper to cast. Not a whole lot cheaper, but a little bit cheaper. But it does cost more. But what else do we have in Standard and Historic in large amounts? Reanimation spells, right? Especially Historic. There's so many reanimation decks going on that do some crazy things. So I could see this getting played there. But if not, even in Standard, we've got a lot of reanimation shenanigans going on. This is just another big creature like Titan of Industry. Titan of Industry comes down. It generates you like 3 for 1 value. Atraxa is going to get you like 5 for 1 value because it's in your top 10 cards of your library. It's not unreasonable that you're going to find at least a land, right? You're always going to have land, so you're going to find a land. If you're running a Traxa, then you probably are going to find at least a creature. So land and creature, right? So that's already a 3-for-1 value. And then, I don't know, maybe you have a few sorcery spells or a few instant spells, some removal, right? To kill the opponent's creatures. So you're probably going to find one of those. So that's a 3-for-1 value. Oh, sorry. You have 4-for-1 value. You find 3 cards and you have a big creature on the board, a Traxa. So yeah, 4-for-1 value. I think that's reasonable. And if you manage to get even more like artifacts or enchantments, just icing on the cake. Yeah, but either way, 4-for-1 value, very strong, worth trying to reanimate. Yeah, it's just a really good card. So number 2 slot. All right, moving on. The number 1 card from the new set. Here we go. What is it? It is Capricious Hellraiser. Okay, so we talked about this in my last video, but this card is totally broken. Like, you know, even if you don't get to cast it for its cheaper cost, if you pay 6 mana, the ability is still good. Like, you get to exile 3 random cards in your graveyard, and you cast one of them. So you get to pick. So you have a little bit of selection. Yes, it's random, but you have a little bit of selection on which one to cast. And you cast it for free without paying the mana cost. There's so many ways you can exploit that. You can exile things from your own graveyard, you know, so you get to choose what you get to cast. You know, it's not that hard to turn this on to get the 9 cards in your graveyard to cast it for 3 red pips. So it's going to be broken somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be standard. I think it's going to be good in standard. It may not be broken in standard, but somewhere, historic, modern, pioneer, whatever, someone is going to find out how to break this card, and this card is going to be just really, really good. So yeah, anytime you can do something for free at a pretty cheap price, it's busted. So I have no doubt in my mind that somebody's going to break this card, and you know, you're going to be casting like Emrakul's or something from your graveyard. I guess you can, it's a creature, but you get the idea. Like, you're going to be casting ginormous spells from your graveyard with this card. So anyway, that's the number 1 pick. I stand by it. I think it's just a really powerful card and one of the best, well, the best new card in the new set. Yeah, so anyway, let me know what you think. Did I miss anything that you think is going to be just broken? You know, do you disagree with any of my top 10 list or the order or anything like that? Let me know. And I also want to know what you guys think about the unofficial spoilers. Like, are you trying to avoid them? Do you not care? Do you look at them anyway? My opinion is I don't want to spoil it for other people unless, you know, I know everyone's okay with it. But they're already spoiled. I have to build, you know, new brews out of those with those cards soon, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's okay to look at them, in my personal opinion. But let me know what you think. Maybe you're super opposed to it. I want to know those things. So yeah, please share them in the comments and like and subscribe to see more Magic content coming up. And the 5 new brews will be coming up real soon. So get ready for that. But yeah. Till next time, have a great time, have some fun out on the ladder, and see ya.